Good, bright, and beautiful morning, my friends. It is 6 a.m. and, well, Star Trek Picard is premiering episodes on Thursdays at 3, so I decided to get up super early and watch it and do a review. I guess that is one of the responsibilities of being this nerdy, I suppose, so... So this review is going to be very similar to my first. The first portion of the review is going to focus on just my general overview of the episode without spoilers, my impressions of it, and then I'm going to prompt you when I'm actually going to go into spoilers, so just keep that in mind, alright? So, Episode 2 of Star Trek Picard definitely picks up in momentum in comparison to the first episode. A lot of people loved the first episode. It's been receiving wonderful reviews, but there were a few who were making comments like, well, it starts very slowly. And I believe that that episode starts slowly because we are looking at Jean-Luc Picard's life 20 years later after Star Trek Nemesis. He's living the quiet, paced, well, in a way, slow lifestyle, so it makes sense that the show would reflect that same pacing too. But episode 2, in light of the things set in motion in episode 1, definitely picks up in pacing, so if you're that person that prefers more like fast-paced Star Trek, like say in Star Trek Discovery, well, episode 2 is going to really be the episode for you. Additionally, some people were kind of not sure of what was happening because obviously since this is 20 years later, there's only so much context and history that can be discussed in the first episode from like the 20 years between Star Trek Nemesis and Star Trek Picard. But episode 2 makes a very distinct effort essentially building in that history and explaining some of the context. So if you were wanting to know more of the history, then episode 2, titled Maps and Legends, is going to definitely be helpful for you. So, red alert, I am about to go into spoilers, and I will try to be as brief and to the point as possible, but the episode begins with Picard and his Romulan counterparts, Loris, and I think the other gentleman's name is Jaban. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. I'm still getting used to everybody's names. But they are assisting Picard in investigating the death of Daj, the synthetic that was killed at the end of the first episode, and we discover that that synthetic has some sort of connection to Data and the character Commander Maddox, who we saw in Star Trek The Next Generation. Interestingly, we discover, based on the revelation that Laris and Jaban are former Tel Shiar agents of the Romulan Empire, we are introduced to the idea that there is an older organization that used to function in Romulan society called the Zhat Vash, which they're much older, like I said, they're much more mysterious, and they believe that the best person to keep secrets is a person who is dead, essentially. So, very dark, very insidious, and by the end of the episode, we discover that there is essentially Romulan agents working in the Federation. So Picard ends up, discovering this by going to Daj's apartment. He ends up discovering that there are Romulan agents on Earth, but doesn't realize that it's as high up as, say, the Commodore of Starfleet security, so on and so forth. But he goes and meets with Admiral Clancy to get reinstated so he can go find Commander Maddox, or whatever his rank is now. The Admiral declines his request, so he ends up, by the end of the episode, seeking out assistance from not only Dr. Jurati, but a former character that he was close with on, a prior vessel, which is established in the comic books, the Countdown series. So there was a lot of background world building in this episode, and I think that's a big responsibility a lot of second episodes have in series nowadays. They have to create that history and that world building. And it goes as far as beginning the episode with documenting in a flashback the synth attack. So we get to be introduced to some of the androids that were created and what they did in order to, rebel and destroy Mars, essentially. So what's interesting for me, and I think that this might come into play later on in the series, is that in that opening sequence, we see a lot of Starfleet workers, or Federation workers, treating the synths horribly. Basically not even acknowledging them as people, making jokes with them, kind of insulting their lack of sense of humor, lack of social graces, which we saw frequently, not only in Star Trek The Next Generation with Data, but in Voyager with the Doctor. I really think that there is going to be another underlying theme throughout the series about the rights and privileges of synthetic life forms, because they're kind of setting up that juxtaposition. We also learned that the reason why Romulans are not a huge fan of synthetic life forms is because, well, they've always not been fans of them. Like, I'm really thinking there was some sort of really bad event where Romulans experimented with synthetic life forms hundreds of years ago and it went awry. But we discover from Laris that there is no synthetic life or AI in the Romulan Empire at all whatsoever. So that was, I think, was extremely interesting. So there was a lot of speculation about whether or not this is going to connect to Star Trek Discovery, because the last season focused on Control, which was an artificial intelligence. So we're going to see maybe if this new season of Discovery might somehow be informed by what happens in Star Trek Picard. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see. Anyway, I'm really excited. I give this episode an A as well, because I think it quickens the pace, but it doesn't lose the momentum that it establishes. And of course, by the end of the episode, we get a little bit more inkling as to why Romulans are experimenting with Borg people, like a Borg cube that's been severed from the collective. So, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. I'll let you guys watch the episode. So if you haven't watched the new episode yet, please go do so. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And if you are a Star Trek fan like me, feel free to subscribe to my channel, because I will be having more conversations and reviews about Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery, because we are living in another golden age of Star Trek, because there's so many series coming out. Anyway, thank you, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.